perfect segue into schools. Last week, I brought up Dr. Gales, Dr. Stoddard, Dr. Bridgers about how we're getting close to this massive reinfusion of students back in schools. I've been apprised of Daly Elementary School and a true outbreak by definition in terms of what has happened. We're also exploring whether there was actual classroom transmission based on that case. Can you give us a little bit more information about that? And then also whether or not this gives us pause to what we're doing starting on April 19th.
Well, I think what I prefer to do, Councilman Rice, be happy to follow up with you and have a discussion with our contact tracing team to get more information. We have had a couple instances. For example, we had a situation yesterday where there were two classrooms at an elementary school where we did a pooled sample. And for the folks at home, the pooled sample means that everyone contributes to one larger sample, and if it comes back positive, then all of the individuals who contributed to that sample would then need to get individual tests. And so we are, getting in further information and completing that process and that investigation. And so we'd be happy to follow up with you offline following this conversation when we get more details so that we can answer your specific questions. But yes, we certainly are continuing to follow up in any of those cases that are positive, as well as those conditions that have been reported to us that are COVID-like illnesses, and providing guidance to the school systems in those cases.
Thank you. And then last but not least, remind me as we enter into, because the last part of this is my last question, Mr. President. Normally I don't ask a lot, so I apologize. We're leading into graduation. Folks are looking to have graduation parties. We've heard that some schools are actually doing graduations this year. Last year, we forewent that for the majority of our public schools. Weddings, all kinds of other celebrations. Remind folks as to what the guidance is for gathering group sizes, because I think that, again, we haven't talked a lot about that in terms of what the limitations are. And so I think that folks, again, are relaxed based on the fact that we have vaccinations, which seem to be out there and still moving, even with the, little bit of a backward slide with Johnson & Johnson. But folks are feeling much more comfortable. And I don't think that they're still thinking about, to Councilmember Katz's point, the risk that's still out there when it comes to contracting COVID, regardless of whether you've been vaccinated or not. So what is our current guidance when it comes to gathering sizes? What is our current restrictions and limitations, just to make sure that folks at home, for the millions that are watching at home, understand what's going on?
Well, so our capacity limits depend on situations, but globally, indoor capacity is set at 25 and outdoor capacity is set at 50. And within that, there's certain, for example, we do have, for indoor restaurants, for example, 50% capacity, but it's tied to physical distancing and making sure that's enforced. So that number may be a little bit variable in terms of what the raw number is outside of percentage within that. And, to the point that you made about graduation, I know that there's continued to be extreme coordination with members of our planning groups and logistics teams. I know Dr. Stoddard participated in the call yesterday with MCPS to work through graduation guidelines, and the team has been looking at other jurisdictions, including DC and others, who have policies out to study those, to come up with a plan, not only for our public schools here, but also for the non-public schools. And I believe I've seen at least one draft of those so far, and we'll be finalizing those hopefully in the near future to be able to share so that they can plan. And I think it speaks to a larger issue here, is we are doing everything we can to support activities to move forward, to return to some semblance of where we were pre-COVID. And in a lot of those instances, so for example, you mentioned we didn't have graduations last year. It's different. So we're trying to help support those activities move forward, but we also need folks at home to be patient and understand that even moving those activities forward, at least in the short term, they may not be back to 100% of what it looked like before, because we want to make sure that we are continuing to provide guidance to minimize any risk of transmission and exposure. And consistent within that, we're trying to provide guidance in the real time that's shaped by our reality right now. it's hard to speculate where we will be 2 to 3 months or 4 months or 6 months down the road. And we do, in providing that guidance, we're providing real-time guidance, but we're also making sure folks understand that if situations change, there may be the opportunity to expand those provisions or do things differently compared to what the guidance we're providing right now.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Gales, Dr. Stoddard. Go ahead, Dr. Stoddard.
I was just going to chime in on the one thing we did here, and I think this is important for all schools thinking about graduation now, is there seems to be some confusion around the CDC's 3-foot recommendations for in classrooms. That would not apply to a graduation, just so we're very clear. Those recommendations apply to cohorted students in a singular classroom that don't exchange. The graduation ceremony is a very different kind of scenario. So just for the schools out there who are doing graduation planning now, we're going to produce some guidelines for you, but don't be thinking about that 3-foot guidance, whether it's outdoors or not, in terms of the separation between graduates as well as their family members. So it makes the spacing requirements substantially different, but you should not be proceeding with a 3-foot distance in graduation ceremonies.
Along those lines, I would just caution us because folks pay very close attention. And a stadium filled with proud parents watching their child walk across the stage is no different from a stadium full of proud parents watching their child kick a soccer ball into a goal or hit a home run or do any of the other kinds of things. And so when we're talking about leading with safety, if we're going to start making those exceptions then run across the board and aren't just for graduations. And I'm speaking as a parent whose daughter stood in front of a banner and that was her graduation. So I get it and understand where parents are, what they'd like to see. I've experienced the heartache of that being her only thing. And I know what it means for kids. And so I want to see that happen. But I also understand that if we do this, then everyone's going to ask for it for everything else that we do. And there's really no justification from a safety perspective if we're doing it for this, why we can't do it for that, i.e. soccerplex, i.e. other kinds of things. So I just, again, want to make sure that we're thinking about this in the context of the direction that we're going in and the message that we're sending to our community about what is safe and what isn't. But thank you, and I look forward to continuing to follow up. Thank you, Mr.